There comes a point in every man's life when the noise fades. No constant texts, no dates to impress, no one to explain yourself to. Just silence. At first it feels strange, but over time it becomes something else, something powerful. The longer a man is single, the more he begins to change. Not in ways most people expect. He becomes more focused, more disciplined, less distracted. He starts choosing peace over attention, growth over validation. People around him may not understand it. They may wonder why he's alone or assume he's avoiding love. But the truth is far deeper. Singleness, when used wisely, becomes a forge, shaping him into something solid, calm, and unshaken. This isn't about avoiding relationships. It's about what happens when a man stops chasing and starts building, when he begins mastering himself instead of seeking completion in others. In today's video, we'll explore why a season of singleness can be one of the most powerful phases in a man's life, and how Stoic philosophy explains every step of that journey. Stay with me. What you learn today might just change how you view yourself and your path forward. At first, it's not easy. The moment a man chooses to stay single, whether by decision or by circumstance, he starts to feel it. The pressure, the questions, the expectations. Friends ask, "Why aren't you dating?" Family wonders, "When will you settle down?" Social media shows highlight reels of relationships, weddings, and perfect couples. And silently, the thought creeps in, maybe I'm falling behind. This is where the internal battle begins. Not because being single is wrong, but because society often sees it as incomplete. For many men, especially in their 20s and 30s, the assumption is clear. If you're not dating, you're not progressing. If you're not in love, you're missing something. If you're alone, something must be wrong. But here's the truth. None of that is real. It's noise. It's projection. It's the world trying to define your value by someone else's checklist. In Stoic philosophy, there's a principle that speaks directly to this. Epictetus once said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life." That freedom includes freedom from expectations, freedom from needing approval, and most importantly, freedom from the fear of being alone. But let's be honest, the early stages of singleness don't always feel freeing. For many men, it can feel empty. The silence after work, the weekends without plans, the birthdays spent solo. It's in those quiet moments that doubt creeps in. You start wondering if something's wrong with you, if you're unlovable, if you've missed your shot. This is where most men either escape or evolve. Some rush back into relationships, not because they're ready, but because they're uncomfortable with the quiet. They'd rather deal with drama than face their own reflection. Others turn to distraction, scrolling endlessly, drinking, chasing validation, anything to avoid feeling alone. But the man who leans into it, the one who sits with the silence, instead of running from it, he starts to change. He begins to realize that loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Loneliness is the pain of not having someone. Solitude is the power of choosing to be with yourself. That shift in mindset changes everything. The Stoics taught that your peace comes not from what others give you, but from what you build within. That doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you learn to understand it. You learn to sit with discomfort, not escape it. You learn to separate what's in your control from what isn't. And let's be clear, it takes strength to walk alone. In a world that constantly tells you to be in a relationship, to seek love, to find your person, it takes courage to say, "I'm working on me right now. I'm building, healing, learning, growing." Because that decision comes with silence. And in silence, your demons get loud. You'll remember past mistakes. You'll question your worth. You'll feel like you're falling behind while others move forward. But what if they're just moving in circles? What if chasing relationships out of fear is the real trap, and singleness is the rare opportunity to build something solid? See, most people confuse being busy with being fulfilled. They rush into relationships without doing the inner work. They lean on others to fill the gaps they refuse to face in themselves. But the man who walks alone for a while, he gets to face those gaps. He gets to grow through them. He gets to figure out who he is when no one is clapping for him, loving him or validating him. And that self-awareness is priceless, because when a man builds himself in silence, when he strengthens his mind, regulates his emotions, and aligns with his values, he becomes something rare. He becomes steady in a world full of chaos. He becomes grounded in a world obsessed with attention. He becomes free in a world full of dependence. This is the journey of the modern Stoic, not emotionless, not cold, but deeply present, calm, aware, purpose-driven. He no longer needs a partner to feel whole, but he can still love deeply when the right one comes along, because his love won't come from fear or loneliness. It will come from strength, from clarity, from peace. So if you're in that early stage, if you're single and feeling the pressure, breathe. You're not falling behind. You're stepping off the path everyone's rushing down, and you're creating your own. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but so is growth, so is healing, so is becoming someone who doesn't just follow the crowd, but leads his own life. You're not broken, you're building. You're not alone, you're in training. And this phase, as hard as it may feel, is shaping you into a man the world isn't used to, because most people don't choose this path. But you did. And that makes all the difference. There's a quiet shift that happens when you've been single for a while. You start to gain emotional distance from things that used to control you. You're no longer reacting to every message, craving every compliment, or feeling shaken by silence. That space, the distance between trigger and reaction, that's where emotional discipline begins. And in a world where everyone is constantly reacting, that discipline makes you powerful. Let's be real. Most people today are emotional slaves. They're driven by likes, comments, attention, and drama. They need validation, and when they don't get it, they spiral. They post cryptic stories. They start arguments. They chase closure from people who never cared. But when you've been single long enough, when you've had time to sit with yourself, you begin to rise above that noise. You stop needing attention to feel worthy. You stop reacting to rejection as if it's a personal attack. You stop seeing emotion as something to indulge and start seeing it as something to understand. That's emotional discipline, and it's rare. Because it takes work. It's easier to blame someone else than to sit in silence and ask yourself, why did I react that way? But the man who learns to ask that question consistently without shame becomes dangerous in the best way. Not because he's cold, but because he's calm. Stoicism teaches us something simple but powerful. Emotions are natural, but how we respond is a choice. Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor and Stoic thinker, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In other words, you can't always control what happens, but you can always control how you show up. That's emotional discipline. Think about how powerful that is in relationships. Most men chase validation because they haven't built internal confidence. They panic when someone pulls away, get jealous at the first sign of competition, and try to impress to stay relevant. But when you've trained yourself to remain steady, when you've spent months or years alone, building emotional muscle, none of that shakes you anymore. You become the kind of man who doesn't overreact, doesn't over-explain, and doesn't overthink. You listen more. You speak less, you feel deeply, but you move wisely. That self-control is attractive, it's rare, and it's something that only grows when you've taken time to build yourself without distractions. Most men never get the chance. They jump from one relationship to the next, carrying the same wounds, the same fears, the same insecurities. They never pause to ask, what's mine to heal? But you've chosen something different. This season of being single has given you space, and in that space, you've begun to slow down. You no longer chase drama for excitement. You've started to appreciate peace. And here's the thing, emotional discipline doesn't mean you suppress your feelings. It means you learn to see them clearly before acting on them. Let's say you're ghosted. Most people spiral, overanalyze, stalk social media, send follow-ups, or shut down emotionally. But you feel it. You acknowledge the sting. Then you respond with grace, silence, detachment, movement forward. That's power, that's growth. That's the result of emotional training that most people skip. Stoicism isn't about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally intelligent. It's about building the awareness to say, I feel anger, but I won't let it make my decisions. I feel loneliness, but I won't run to the wrong people to fix it. I feel fear, but I will not bow to it. And here's where it gets interesting. The longer you walk this path, the more you start to attract people who respect that strength. Not everyone will understand you. In fact, some will find your calm unsettling. Why? Because emotional discipline shines a light on their lack of it. But the right people, they'll feel it. They'll feel safe around you. Not because you're loud or dominant, but because you're steady. That steadiness makes you a better friend, a better partner, a better man. You become someone who doesn't flinch in hard conversations, someone who doesn't let emotions hijack logic, someone who knows that peace is more valuable than being right. And you start to see emotional reactions in others not as threats, but as signs, signals of where they're still learning. And you, because you've walked the path, respond with patience, not panic. This is the real power of being single for a season. It's not about isolation. It's about elevation and emotional. Discipline is the foundation of that growth. So if you're in that phase right now, learning to stay calm, to reflect instead of react, know this. You're not weak for walking away from drama. You're not boring for choosing peace. You're not distant for valuing clarity over chaos. You're just becoming rare. And rare is always misunderstood until it's needed. There's a shift that happens when you stop living for someone else's attention. You wake up one day and realize you're not waiting for a text. You're not checking your phone for validation. You're not wondering if you're enough. You're building, you're becoming. And that's the beauty of being single for a while. Without the distractions, you finally get the space to meet the real you. Most people don't realize this. They think being single is a curse. They think it means something is wrong with them. But Stoicism flips that idea on its head. The Stoics believed in self-governance, being the master of your thoughts, actions, and time. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And nothing drains your time like chasing people who don't know your worth. When you're single long enough, you stop wasting energy trying to prove yourself. You redirect that power inward, into discipline, into health, into your mission. And here's the shift. You stop saying, "I hope they choose me," and you start saying, "How can I choose a better version of me today?" That's self-mastery. You begin to build routines that feed your soul. Waking up earlier, working out, learning skills, reading more, thinking deeper. You make decisions with long-term vision. You eat cleaner, rest better, and chase clarity instead of chaos. And the best part, you start seeing results. Your body changes, your focus sharpens, your goals become non-negotiable. You're not drifting anymore. You're directing. That's the power of being alone without being lonely. You're not escaping solitude, you're leveraging it. When everyone else is losing themselves in relationships that drain them, you're investing in habits that elevate. You realize your purpose isn't tied to someone's presence. You stop asking, "When will they come?" and start asking, "What am I building until they do?" And in that pursuit, something magical happens. Your confidence becomes rooted in action, not in looks, not in status, not in followers, but in the quiet pride of a man who shows up every day for himself. You stop needing praise because your progress is your proof. You stop craving attention because your direction is clear. And here's the Stoic twist. You become content without being complacent. Grateful, but still hungry. Peaceful, but still powerful. Because now, you're not trying to control outcomes. You're focused on what you can control. Your habits, your values, your mind. That's real freedom. And it's only possible when you've stepped away from emotional noise long enough to hear your own voice. Let me ask you this. What if this season of singleness is your most important training ground? What if it's not a punishment, but preparation? What if the longer you stay alone, the clearer your purpose becomes? Imagine the version of you that's no longer ruled by external approval. The man who wakes up with intention, who moves with conviction, who speaks with clarity, who gives but never begs, who loves but never loses himself in the process. That's the version you're building right now. And the truth is, not everyone will see it. They'll look at your quiet life and think you're missing out. But what they don't see is the fire you're building behind the scenes. You're not missing out. You're setting up. And when the time is right, the world will see it. So keep doing the work. Keep choosing growth over gossip, books over parties, silence over senseless noise, purpose over people-pleasing. Because while others are distracted, you're being refined. And eventually that refinement will speak so loudly, you won't need to explain yourself. So stay patient. Stay grounded. Stay focused. You're not just getting through this season, you're becoming through it. And that's what Stoicism is all about. By now, you've been through the fire, you've faced the pressure, you've chosen purpose over popularity, and something begins to shift. Not on the outside first, but deep within. You carry yourself differently. There's a stillness in your presence. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You walk into a room and don't need to announce yourself because your energy does it for you. This is the quiet confidence that only time alone can build. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's magnetic, rare, unshakable. Most people chase attention. They want to be seen, heard, and validated. But you stop chasing. And that's exactly why people start to notice. See, in a world of noise, silence becomes powerful. In a culture obsessed with being liked, authenticity becomes attractive. The Stoics believed in mastering the inner world before trying to influence the outer one. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. You've become that man, not because you shouted about your worth, but because you quietly became it. You didn't post every milestone. You didn't seek approval for every move. You just kept showing up, kept building, kept growing. And now, that energy speaks louder than anything you could have said. You've become rare, not just because you're successful, but because you're centered, because you're not desperate, because you're no longer emotionally reactive. You don't chase validation anymore. You don't beg for connection. You know your value, and you're willing to walk away from anything that doesn't match it. And that's when the tables turn. The same world that once overlooked you starts to look again. They wonder, why does he seem so composed? Why does he look like he knows something we don't? And the truth is, you do. You've faced the silence. You've embraced the solitude. And instead of breaking you, it built you. You've become someone who doesn't just survive being alone, you thrive in it. Someone who doesn't just endure the quiet, you find power in it. And that's rare, that's attractive, that's unforgettable. People may not know what you've been through, but they'll feel the strength it gave you. They'll see it in your eyes, in how you walk, in what you tolerate, or more importantly, what you don't. You're no longer trying to impress. You're simply expressing. And that expression, calm, focused, intentional, is your quiet superpower. So, let others rush. Let them chase status. Let them lose themselves in attention games. You found something more valuable: peace. Peace in who you are. Peace in who you're becoming. Peace in the path you're walking, even if you're walking it alone right now. And here's the paradox. The longer you stay true to this path, the more visible you become. Not because you demanded it, but because your growth became impossible to ignore. So own your rarity. Stand in it. Don't shrink it to fit into shallow spaces. Don't dim it to make others comfortable, because when you've taken the time to build quiet confidence, you don't need noise to feel important. Your presence is the message. Your discipline is the proof. Your peace is the power. And that's what makes you rare. By now, you've built strength, not just the physical kind, but the mental, emotional, and spiritual kind. And the more time you spend alone, the more you discover something even more powerful than success. Peace. Not surface peace, the kind you pretend to have for appearances. Not temporary peace, the kind that depends on whether someone texts you back, but deep peace. Stoic peace, the kind that says, I may not have everything yet, but I'm exactly where I need to be. You see, the world is obsessed with performance, with metrics, with proving something, likes, follows, relationships, status. But inner peace, that's a flex they can't measure. And it's the ultimate advantage, because when you're no longer trying to prove anything, you become unshakable. When you're no longer worried about how others perceive you, you finally get to focus on how you perceive yourself. That's where true power begins. Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Think about that. All the pain you felt chasing things outside of you, love, approval, recognition, it all came from forgetting what's actually within your power. But now, after the silence, after the struggle, you remember. You control how you show up. You control how you respond. You control how you evolve. That's peace. And it's rare. Most men don't get here because they never stay alone long enough to meet their real self. They hop from one distraction to the next, one relationship to the next, always looking to be filled by something external, never realizing the emptiness was internal. But you faced the void, you sat in the stillness, and you came out with something no one can take from you. Clarity. Clarity about what matters. Clarity about your values. Clarity about your purpose. And that clarity gives you a calm others can't understand. You're not racing anymore. You're not performing. You're just being focused, centered, free. Now, when life throws chaos your way, you don't panic, you pause, you don't react, you reflect, you don't fight every battle, you choose which ones deserve your energy, and because of that, you begin to attract different things. People sense your calm. They feel safe around your energy, not because you're loud, but because you're rooted. They may not know your story, but they can tell you've done the inner work. They can feel the stillness behind your eyes. They can hear the peace in your voice. That's the strength of the man who chose solitude over settling, growth over comfort, peace over performance. And the truth is, this version of you doesn't need to be explained. He doesn't chase because he knows what's meant for him won't require begging. He doesn't rush because he understands timing. He doesn't fear loneliness because he turned it into leadership. You are now the kind of man who doesn't get thrown off balance, because your balance is no longer external. It's internal, rooted in principle, rooted in presence, rooted in peace. And when you reach this place, something beautiful happens. Even if no one chooses you, you still choose yourself, not from ego, but from love. Because you now know you were never missing anything. You just needed time to meet the full version of you. So let the world keep performing. Let them keep rushing and proving and chasing. You've already won something far more powerful: inner stillness, self-respect, and peace. The kind that isn't loud, but lasts. And that, my friend, is what makes you unstoppable. Here's the twist no one talks about. The longer you stay single, not by default but by choice, the more whole you become. And when you become whole, you stop chasing, not because you've given up, but because you've finally woken up. You realize you were never meant to beg for attention, never meant to prove your worth. You were meant to build it, to embody it, to let it speak for you without saying a word. The paradox of personal growth is simple. The moment you no longer need something, you become the kind of person who naturally attracts it. It's not magic. It's alignment. See, when you stop chasing love out of fear, you start attracting love rooted in strength. When you stop rushing into relationships just to fill a void, you start creating space for one that actually adds value. You no longer settle because you know what you bring. You're not trying to complete anyone because you've already completed yourself. And ironically, that's when people start noticing you more. But here's the key. By the time they come, you're no longer desperate for them to stay. You've become a man who isn't defined by who walks into his life, but by how grounded he is when they walk out. A man who values connection, but never at the cost of his peace. A man who sees love as a gift, not a rescue mission. The Stoics would nod at this truth. Seneca wrote, "The greatest wealth is a poverty of desires." Translation: the less you crave, the freer you become. And freedom is the ultimate power. When you were younger, you might have chased to feel important. Now, you pause and ask, is this aligned with my values? Does this connection honor my peace? Am I choosing this from power or from fear? That's maturity. That's wisdom. That's the gift of time spent alone with purpose. So if you're still single right now, don't panic, don't shrink, don't compare your journey to the noise of everyone else. Use this time, sharpen your mind, train your body, grow your spirit. Build your foundation so strong that love becomes a complement, not a crutch. Because when you become the kind of man who's already full, love adds joy, not identity. And that's the difference between those who chase and those who attract. The world will tempt you to rush, to settle, to just pick someone so you're not alone. But remember this, the wrong connection will cost you more than your loneliness ever will. You didn't come this far to trade your peace for pressure. You've done the work, you've sat in the silence. You've cultivated inner power, not to beg but to choose wisely. And now you get to lead with calm. You get to decide with clarity. You get to love from overflow, not emptiness. That's the paradox. You wanted connection, and life gave you solitude. You embraced solitude, and it gave you everything: clarity, purpose, power, peace. So the next time someone asks, "Why are you still single?" smile. Because you know what they don't. You're not waiting, you're becoming. And when you finally meet the right person, if that time comes, you won't meet them from a place of need. You'll meet them as a man who already found what he was looking for within himself. So now you know the truth. The longer a man is single, not by chance but by choice, the more powerful, peaceful, and purposeful he becomes. It's not loneliness, it's refinement. And the man who masters himself never fears being alone. If this message hit home for you, do this. Like the video to help more men hear this truth. Subscribe for more Stoic wisdom and mindset tools. And in the comments, tell me, what's the biggest lesson your time alone has taught you? Until next time, stay calm, stay grounded, stay powerful.